In this video, I'm going to be working through problems using unit analysis to convert rates. So in the previous video we converted just single measurements, but now we're going to convert rates. And remember that a rate is going to be a ratio whose numerator and denominator have different units. So in this first example we have 88 feet per second, and we're going to convert that to miles per hour. So as we first set this up, it's going to be 88 feet on top and then per second, so 1 second on bottom, just like that. So we're going to be multiplying by a few unit multipliers, and our goal is to change our feet to miles and our seconds to hours, which means that when we're done we need to have miles on top and hours on bottom, and then we'll deal with the numbers here afterwards. So let's focus first on getting from feet to miles. So in order to do feet to miles, I need my miles on top, which means my feet are going to need to cancel. So feet and feet will cancel there. Well, what's the relationship between feet and miles? Well, there's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So here, this one single unit conversion, we've gone from feet to miles. Well, so we're still in seconds though, and we want to go seconds to hours. So we need something here to cancel my seconds out. Well, can we go directly from seconds to hours? Well, maybe you know that conversion. Let's go seconds to minutes first. And what's the relationship between seconds and minutes? Well, there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. Now that we're in minutes, now let's go to hours. So we're going to have minutes on top, so they cancel. Hours on bottom, because that's where that needs to be. So my minutes cancel. And what's the relationship between minutes and hours? Well, there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. So let's take a look for a moment at all this stuff that we have. We have all of our units have canceled out appropriately, and we're left with miles on top and hours on bottom, because we're finding miles per hour. Now we have a bunch of numbers here. So if you're putting this in your calculator, here's how this is going to work. Everything that's on the top gets multiplied, and everything that's on the bottom is divided. So you could do this a couple of ways. You could say 88 times 60 times 60, and then divide by 5,280. Or you could do 88 divided by 5,280, and then times 60 and times 60. But no matter how you choose to do this, 88 feet per second is going to come out to be 60 miles per hour. And instead of having miles on top and hours on bottom, I can do mph, miles per hour, and that's what that means right there. So if you go through and take 88 times 60 times 60, then you can divide that by 5,280, and then I'll give you a really nice 60 miles per hour on that first rate conversion. In this second problem for converting rates, we're going to convert 50 gallons per minute to quarts per second. So maybe this is the flow rate in a pipe or something, but we have 50 gallons every minute. So let's take that to quarts per second. So when we do this, we start with 50, and I'll abbreviate my gallons as GAL, and then over 1 minute, because it's 50 gallons for every 1 minute. So let's go from gallons to quarts first. So what's the relationship between gallons and quarts? Well, I know there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon, so I need to cancel my gallons, so gallons will have to be on bottom, and then quarts can go on top, and there's a specific relationship, or a direct relationship between quarts and gallons. So 1 gallon is the same as 4 quarts, and my gallons here can cancel out very nicely. And the last one, let's go from minutes to seconds. So what's the relationship here? If I have minutes on top, and I need to divide that, so my minutes cancel, and then I can have my seconds on bottom where they're supposed to be. So 1 minute is the same as 60 seconds. Okay? Well, when I take this, 50 gallons times 4, or no, gallons are gone, 50 times 4 will be 200 over my number is 60, and my units that are left over are quarts and seconds, which that's where I was headed, right? Quarts per second. So I could say quarts over seconds. And you can do a few things from here. I mean, you could grab a calculator and figure this out. I know that these zeros are going to cancel, and 20 divided by 6 should be something like 3.3 repeating, and we could say quarts per second, and that would work. So if we had 50 gallons every minute, we're saying that's going to be 3 1/3, or 3.3 repeating quarts per second. And just as a little note, do you know what this repeating bar over the decimal is called that indicates that it goes on and on forever? It's called a vinculum. And a vinculum, that's Latin. And vinculums are used in mathematics. It's a horizontal bar that's used to group numbers. So our fraction bar is also called a vinculum, and the repeating bar is called a vinculum. In this last example, let's take 70 miles per hour and go to yards per second. So they say that a cheetah can run at top speed at about 70 miles per hour. So I'm curious as to how many yards that is per second, and then we could kind of relate that to the length of a football field, right? Because a football field is measured in yards. So let's take our 70 miles per hour. So 70 miles over 1 hour. Let's talk about going to yards first, miles to yards. Well, do you know how many yards are in a mile? Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But we can go first. 1 mile is 5,280 feet, because then I know it's pretty easy, because there are 3 feet in 1 yard. Okay, so let's look at what we've just done. We wanted to go from miles to yards, but we're not exactly sure how many yards is in 1 mile, so maybe we need to go through feet first. So we went miles to feet, and then feet to yards. So our miles cancel, and our feet cancel. By the way, there are 1,760 yards in 1 mile, if you need to know that for the future. So now we're going from hours, and let's move to seconds. So we've done that before. Say there's 1 hour in 60 minutes, and then in 1 minute there are 60 seconds. And then notice our hours can cancel, our minutes can cancel, and we're left with yards per second. And that's exactly what we were shooting for. So all of our units have now canceled, and we're just left with numbers. So let's go ahead, and on the side over here, let me put all these numbers together. So we have 70 times 5,280, right? And that's on top, everything else is ones. On the bottom we have 3 times 60 times 60. Okay, so there's a couple ways you could do this. Again, you could just put everything in your calculator if you wanted to. You could say 70 times 5,280 divided by 3 divided by 60 divided by 60. Or you could multiply the top together, multiply the bottom together, and then divide. It kind of is what you want to do. Let's multiply this top first. 70 times 5,280. And it looks like that'll be something like 369,600. And on the bottom, 3 times 60 should be right at 10,800. Okay, so, I mean, these don't really, this is big numbers that don't really do anything for us. So let's go ahead, and if we take this 369,600 and divide that by 10,800, let's see, you should get right at 34.2 repeating. And our units, recall, were yards per second. So if we're saying that a cheetah can run about 70 miles per hour, and let's see if we can get that 70, yeah, 70 miles per hour, and we wanted to know about yards per second, well, we're saying that a cheetah can go about 34, or a little over 34 yards every second. And think about the length of a football field. If you don't count the end zones, it's just 100 yards. So that means in about 3 seconds, it could go from goal line to goal line, and maybe a little bit into the end zone as well, in just 3 seconds. So that is a pretty fast cat. So here we've looked at rate conversions, where we had units on the top and units on the bottom.